The night was unusually still as I drove into my driveway, the headlights creating long shadows on the ground. Just as I reached for my car door, I noticed a swift movement. A cat had jumped onto the hood. This wasn't just any cat. She seemed desperate. Her green eyes locked onto mine, filled with a silent plea. Then, with a sudden movement, she meowed, hopped off the car, and looked back, almost inviting me to follow her. I paused, my heart racing. What did she need from me? It felt as though she was trying to communicate something important. Carefully, I stepped out of the car, my gaze still on the stray. Instead of running away, she turned and walked a few paces ahead, pausing to glance back at me, almost waiting for me to catch up. It felt like this wasn't just a chance meeting. She wanted me to follow her. "Okay, where are we going?" I whispered to her as I took a step forward. She guided me down the street, past some parked cars, and toward an abandoned lot in my neighborhood. The area was neglected, overtaken with weeds, and sandwiched between two houses. Suddenly, I heard it. Soft, high-pitched mews coming from under a pile of wooden planks. I crouched down, shining my flashlight into the dimness. There, nestled in a small makeshift nest, were 3 tiny kittens. They were huddled together, their fur dirty, and their wide eyes looking up at me. The mother cat, whom I decided to call Luna, nudged my leg and let out a low, urgent meow. She wasn't just showing me her kittens, she was asking for help. A pang of concern hit me. I had never rescued a cat before, but leaving them here was not an option. The night was getting colder, and I couldn't imagine how long they might have been waiting in the dark. I took a deep breath, realizing this evening had taken an unexpected turn, but I knew I couldn't walk away. Gently, I reached out toward the kittens, unsure of how they would react. As my hand moved closer, the smallest one flinched, pressing itself against its siblings. The second, an orange tabby, let out a tiny hiss, seemingly trying to warn me off. But then, the third kitten, a fluffy gray, lifted its head and let out a soft, trusting mew. Luna walked around me, rubbing against my leg and nudging her babies as if to encourage them. She wanted me to take them. "All right, little ones. Looks like we're doing this," I said quietly, carefully scooping them up. They were surprisingly light, their small bodies barely filling my hands. I placed the tiny kittens inside my hoodie to keep them warm, feeling their quick, anxious heartbeats against me. Luna followed closely as I made my way back to my car. When I opened the door, she jumped in without a second thought, curling up in the passenger seat like she knew this was the best place for her and her babies. As I drove home, I couldn't help but realize I was unprepared. I wasn't exactly a cat person, and managing 4 new lives seemed overwhelming, especially when I barely had time for myself. But as I stole a glance at Luna, her calm yet knowing gaze fixed on me, it felt strangely like she intended this all along. This wasn't about me saving them. Luna had chosen me. Now I found myself unsure of what came next. That evening, I transformed my spare room into a temporary nursery. An old laundry basket, lined with towels, served as their cozy bed, and I set out a dish of water for Luna, hoping she would drink. I didn't have much knowledge about caring for newborn kittens, so I focused on the basics, keeping them warm and fed. The room carried a faint scent of dust and fabric softener, but the little family didn't seem to mind. Luna nestled close to her kittens, tucking them against her, while I let myself hope that all would turn out well. Around 3 a.m., something startled me awake. It was a different sound, not the usual gentle mews from the kittens. I hurried to the nursery and found Luna pacing anxiously around the basket. The kittens were still snuggled together, but my heart sank as I realized one of them, Shadow, was lying still. My heart raced as I gently lifted her. She felt lifeless, barely breathing, and ice cold. A wave of panic washed over me. I had no idea what to do next. Frantically, I grabbed my phone and called Sarah, my closest friend and the only person I knew who had experience with fostering animals. "I don't know what to do," I exclaimed as soon as she answered. "One of the kittens isn't moving." Sarah arrived in about 15 minutes, looking disheveled but focused. She immediately checked Shadow, her face turning serious as she felt the tiny body. "She's weak, likely malnourished. We need to warm her up and get her to a vet first thing in the morning." I wrapped Shadow in a soft fleece blanket, holding her against my chest, trying to provide some warmth. The little kitten barely responded. Luna sat close by, her ears twitching and her golden eyes fixed on me, as if she understood the seriousness of the situation. I suddenly felt the weight of responsibility settle over me. This wasn't just about taking in stray animals, it felt like a matter of life and death. I wanted to help, but now I was confronted with the harsh truth that not every rescue ends in success. I wasn't ready to lose her. As I held Shadow, the tension in the room was palpable. Sarah, usually so calm, seemed to carry a subtle anxiety that weighed heavily on both of us. "You're doing everything you can," she said, but her words seemed to hang in the air without comfort. "We can only give her a chance." I nodded in response, but it felt insufficient. Luna was pacing, her eyes switching between me and her kittens, clearly uncertain about what to do. I could sense Sarah's effort to hide her fears, but I knew she felt the same way I did. "What if she doesn't make it?" I whispered, the fear creeping into my voice. "Then we did our best," Sarah said, but the tremor in her hands as she prepared a warm compress for Shadow betrayed her uncertainty. In that moment, I recognized how deeply this experience was affecting me. When I signed up for rescue work, I hadn't anticipated the heavy burden of responsibility it would bring. I had always viewed rescuing animals as a simple act of kindness, a straightforward choice to provide them with a home. But this was different. It was about life itself, raising the stakes higher than I'd ever imagined. I looked at Luna, who was staring at Shadow. She didn't need me to explain what was happening. She sensed it too. And if she wasn't giving up, neither would I. The days that followed blurred together. I took Sarah's advice to heart, keeping Shadow warm and feeding her with a syringe, trying to provide some much-needed nutrients. I devoted hours to researching how to care for newborn kittens, hoping I was doing it right. The other kittens, Whiskers, Ginger, and even Luna, seemed to be doing all right, but the fear still loomed like a dark cloud above us. Would Shadow pull through? Besides the struggles with Shadow, another challenge arose. Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who often fed the local stray cats, noticed the kittens one afternoon. "Jake, have those cats been at your place?" she asked, curiosity etched in her voice. I nodded. "Yeah, they've been here for a few days now." Her expression grew serious. "I don't want any cats around here. My porch is already full of strays, and they aren't good for the neighborhood. You really need to do something about them before they cause problems." I was taken aback. Mrs. Thompson had been friendly to me before, but this felt different. She wasn't just sharing her opinion, she was laying down a demand. Either I found a way to get rid of the cats, or I would have to hear her complaints. Letting go of the kittens wasn't an option for me, especially while they were still so fragile. Yet, I could feel the pressure building. I was already anxious about whether Shadow would pull through, and now I had to think about the long-term future of these cats. The weight of the situation was becoming clear. The more I considered Mrs. Thompson's demand, the more uneasy I felt. I couldn't just abandon the cats. They depended on me, and Luna had trusted me with her kittens. At the same time, I could understand Mrs. Thompson's perspective. There were indeed too many strays in the area, and some had invaded her garden, scratching up her plants and causing a mess. To complicate things, I was starting to feel a connection to these kittens. I had never considered myself a cat person, but now the thought of giving them up was unfathomable. Ginger would leap into my lap at every opportunity, curling up and purring as if she had found her home. Whiskers was curious and adventurous, exploring every corner of the house, his bright eyes following me wherever I moved. Even Shadow, despite being so delicate, nudged my fingers as if to say, "Thank you for saving me." Yet I began to question my motives. Was I truly caring for them, or was I becoming attached in a way that might be more about my feelings than their needs? What would I do if I couldn't keep them? Should I adopt them, or was I just heading for heartbreak later? I was caught between my desire to help them and the reality of my own limitations. Just when I thought I might have some clarity, a new issue appeared, one that took me completely by surprise. 2 days after Shadow started showing signs of getting better, I was in the backyard checking on Luna and the kittens when I heard a noise coming from the bushes at the edge of the yard. My first thought was another stray cat, and anxiety washed over me. But as I turned around, what I saw was even more alarming. A neighbor's dog, a large scruffy terrier, managed to escape his yard and charged toward the kittens. His frantic barking caused Luna to panic. I watched, worried, as the dog lunged toward the basket where the kittens were sleeping. Without a second thought, I ran toward the dog, shouting, "No, get away from them!" Just in time, I grabbed the dog's collar, yanking him away with all my strength. My heart raced as I checked on the kittens, relieved to find them shaken but unharmed. Luna had already picked them up gently in her mouth, moving them to a safer spot in the yard. But the excitement didn't end there. The dog's owner, Mrs. Jensen from down the street, rushed over, apologizing loudly. "I'm so sorry, Jake. He's never done this before." I felt a mix of anger and shock. I couldn't help but wonder, what if I hadn't been there? What if the kittens hadn't been so lucky? With that thought came another worry. How long could I keep them safe with so many potential dangers around? After the incident with the dog, things changed for Luna and the kittens. She became incredibly watchful, scanning the yard intently. She refused to leave their sides for long, making sure they were either cozy under a blanket or snuggled in a safe corner of the house. It was as if she understood the world outside was risky, and she was determined to protect her little family. It wasn't just Luna who noticed the shift. I also began to feel something deeper developing between me and the kittens. Every time I fed them or cleaned their space, I felt like I was doing more than just fulfilling a responsibility. I was becoming a part of their lives. Whiskers would jump into my lap, curling up and purring happily whenever I sat down. Ginger, always affectionate, would brush against my legs, eager for attention. Even Shadow, who had once been so fragile, started following me around, her soft meows persistent. Initially, I thought my duties were what kept me here. After all, I had committed to caring for them. But as days passed, I realized there was something more, a genuine bond forming between us. They had come to feel like family, and with that realization, the weight of my situation grew heavier. What if I couldn't keep them safe? I found myself discussing the future with Sarah more often. "Do you think I could adopt them all?" I asked one evening, my tone uncertain. She looked back at me, her expression a blend of understanding and reassurance. "Jake, if you're asking, I believe you already have an idea of what the answer is." As the week moved on, I found myself grappling with the dilemma of wanting to do right by the kittens while also facing the reality of my situation. Luna and her babies were thriving, which was reassuring, but I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that I was losing control over what was happening. Mrs. Thompson had been increasingly vocal about the cats, adding to my stress. Just yesterday, she remarked, "I'm not saying you need to get rid of them right this second, but it's time to consider what's best for the neighborhood." Her tone was sharp, almost as if she was reminding me of an unspoken deadline. It was becoming difficult to ignore the growing tension. Then I received a call from Leo, the local vet, which introduced a new layer of anxiety. "Jake, you should bring Luna and the kittens in," he said calmly, yet with a sense of urgency. "We're noticing some signs that could escalate if we don't act fast." I felt a chill run down my spine. What else could possibly go wrong? A heavy feeling settled in my stomach. Did I truly have the capability to manage this? Upon entering the vet's office, I was struck by how attached I had become to them. The thought of letting them go was unbearable. But as Leo conducted a series of tests, doubts began to creep in. Was I making the right choice? The uncertainty of the kitten's future loomed over me, and I realized that I had no control over what might come next. When the test results arrived, they weren't promising. Luna and her kittens had contracted a parasite. While treatable if caught early, it required a strict medication routine. Leo expressed his concerns. If I couldn't follow the plan, or if I couldn't keep them safe and isolated, things could take a turn for the worse. It was clear. The stakes had just risen significantly. Sitting in the small exam room, I stared blankly at the paperwork Leo had handed me. The weight of the situation felt overwhelming. Luna's trusting green eyes met mine, while her kittens played on the floor, blissfully unaware of the impending danger. "Jake," Leo broke my reverie. "You must ask yourself, are you ready for this? Can you provide for them? Or should you consider finding them a different home?" The suggestion left me in disbelief. Finding them another home? After everything that had occurred and all we had experienced together, The thought of letting them go seemed impossible to me. But then a clear truth emerged. I couldn't keep them forever. I struggled to manage my own life, let alone provide the care that 4 playful kittens required. I don't know, I murmured, my voice trembling. I thought I was ready, but now I'm not so sure. Leo nodded thoughtfully, his gaze understanding. It's all right to feel that way, Jake. Making a choice now is wiser than waiting until it's too late. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. The days that followed our visit to the vet were filled with uncertainty. I did my best to follow the treatment plan, giving the kittens their medications, but the growing pressure was becoming heavy. The tension with Mrs. Thompson didn't help. Her impatient demeanor served as a constant reminder that time was slipping away. At home, the kittens were full of energy and affection. Each moment I watched them play with Luna, I felt even more weighed down by my decision. Luna had trusted me, and I had grown attached to them all. Yet it was clear, the path ahead was uncertain, and I questioned if I could manage it all. This wasn't just about my feelings. It was about what would be best for them. Was I truly providing for their needs in my tiny home? Would they thrive better in a different environment, perhaps with a family that could offer them more stability? One evening, as I relaxed on the couch watching the kittens dart around, I confronted a truth I had avoided. I was scared. I feared that I might fail them, disappoint them, and ultimately have to choose to let them go. Jake, you need to make a decision, Sarah said, breaking the silence. This can't keep going on like this. It was time for action. I had to confront what lay ahead. The key question wasn't just whether I was ready, it was whether they were prepared for whatever came next. A final decision was necessary. In that moment, everything felt intense and stretched out in time. I had spent weeks contemplating, worrying, and hoping, but it was time to face the facts. The kittens had thrived under my watch, yet the vital question still remained. What was next for them? That night, after I had fed the last of the kittens and settled them into their cozy bed, I found myself alone in the stillness of the living room. Luna was curled up by my feet, her deep, understanding eyes fixed on me. I felt worn out, both physically and emotionally. Yet, in that quiet moment, the burden of my uncertainty began to lift. I thought about the pressure from Mrs. Thompson, the advice Leo had given me, the warnings from the vet, and the reality that I couldn't provide everything these animals needed. These weren't just cats anymore. They had become part of my family. Despite the love I had for them, I realized that I had to make a difficult choice. Keeping them in my small home forever wasn't fair to them. They deserved a better life. Making the right choice isn't always easy, but deep down, I understood that finding them a safe, loving home was what was best. So I picked up the phone. Leo agreed to assist with the adoption process. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done. As I looked at Luna one last time, I felt a sense of clarity. I knew this was the right decision. They would have the opportunity for a life I couldn't provide, but one they truly deserved. The weeks that followed were filled with mixed emotions. Luna and her kittens found a wonderful foster home where they could flourish. I visited them a few times, observing how they grew stronger and more self-assured. Luna remained the protective mother, while her kittens began to explore the world, each inching towards independence day by day. I wish I could say that everything became easier, that letting them go was the right choice and the hurt faded completely. But honestly, the sadness of saying goodbye remains. I often think of them, how Whiskers would curl up on my lap, or how Ginger's purring would vibrate through my chest. I'll never forget the look in Luna's eyes, full of trust and gratitude. But isn't that what rescue is all about? It's about making tough decisions, the ones that aren't always straightforward, and doing what is in the best interest of the animals, even when it feels like you're losing a part of yourself. The kittens are thriving in their new homes, and Luna has become a beloved member of a family that treasures her. Even though I didn't keep them, I provided them with the chance for a life filled with love and security. Perhaps in the end, that's what truly matters. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice, like whether to help an animal in need or to step back? I'm interested in hearing your opinions on this topic in the comments. If you found this story moving, consider liking, sharing, or subscribing for more uplifting rescue stories. I appreciate you joining me on this journey.